As I'm sure most of you already know by now that I collect Monster High dolls, and recently I was able to add the new Skullector Corpse Bride Emily doll into my collection. I initially ordered this doll through the pre-order Amazon link, which went up before the doll was available through Mattel Creations. I typically like to just straight order through Mattel Creations only because I hear a lot of horror stories about orders that come from Amazon. A lot of people getting orders canceled, or sometimes the package is completely damaged. But with this being a highly anticipated release, I was pretty anxious about not being able to get this doll at MSRP, so I decided to try my luck with an Amazon pre-order. Skip to a couple weeks later and I'm perusing my local toy shop, and they happen to have several Skullector Emily dolls on the shelves, as well as the new release of Real Drama, which was just such a surprise to me because I don't typically see any G1 style Monster High dolls in stores ever. So because I was still anxious about my pre-order possibly getting canceled, I decided to go ahead and pick up a potential second Emily doll for my collection. This was really cool though, because I got to actually examine all the dolls' faces in the store, and if you are a nitpicky collector like me, you like to kind of get the best looking screening on your dolls. You can call me weird, it's fine. So then I come back home that same day to find my pre-ordered Emily doll through Amazon has arrived to my doorstep looking like this. No outer box. The packaging slip is slapped right onto the front, and there's also some tape on the back that was very hard to get off, and I am just, I'm glad that I was able to find this doll in the store. A lot of people are not as lucky as me, but I hope no one is as unfortunate as this if they only bought one doll and it came looking like that. I know things could have been much worse too, the box could have been totally damaged, but I don't understand why they wouldn't put it inside of a shipping box. I mean, someone could have literally just swiped this off of my doorstep, especially because you can see what it is. I'm also sure that I could have used a hairdryer to try and help heat up the sticker from the label and peel it off, but I'm just gonna customize the doll. How about that? Now, while I am a huge fan of Monster High and I was really excited to add Emily into my collection, I just kind of wish she was fully accurate to the movie's depiction. I know that's kind of a lot to ask for in some aspects of this, but there's just a lot of details I want to change to make this doll fully accurate as much as I possibly can. So to start off, I want to make her a new dress. I had to order some fabrics for this project, starting with this white cotton gauze. It's textured like how I want it to be for Emily's dress, as well as easy to work with because it's cotton, and way too much white lace. I started by cutting the skirt out of the cotton gauze using a pattern I made myself. I wanted the skirt to be really big at the start because I'm going to cut a jagged edge along the bottom to make it look weathered and torn. I modified a pattern that I already had for the bodice to make it more elongated and pointed at the bottom, cut that out of the cotton gauze as well, and then cut another layer of it with the white lace to go on top. The plan here is to sew the white lace onto the cotton gauze and then sew all the pieces together. I finished cutting the jagged edge on the bottom of the dress as well as some holes throughout the bottom. I didn't want to cut any of the holes too high because I still need to add some vinyl later on. To ombre the bottom of the dress, I'm using some heavily watered down acrylic paint and applying it with a sponge. You could also just use Rit dye for this. I was kind of worried that the Rit dye would bleed into the fabric too much and go up much higher than I wanted it, so I'm using the watered down acrylic paint. Since it's watered down, you don't have to worry about it drying and stiffening up the fabric at all, it just adds some color. Earlier I mentioned that I would be adding some vinyl onto this dress. I went onto Procreate and drew up some swirl designs that I will be cutting out of this blue shimmery vinyl and then adding to the skirt part of the dress. If you want any of these swirl patterns to cut out of your Cricut and add on to your own custom Emily, I will have all of these designs up for free on my Patreon. You do not have to be a paid member. It's a very simple design. It took me maybe like 20 minutes to draw them all up, but if you don't want to go to the hassle of designing them yourself, you can go over to my Patreon. The link is in the description. Unfortunately, I only had this blue shimmer vinyl in a permanent vinyl. I needed an iron-on vinyl to make this actually work properly. So if you're going to do this, get an iron-on vinyl because that is designed for working with fabric specifically. This doll, however, is going to be a gift to my mom because her and I are both big fans of Corpse Bride, and we would watch the movie a lot together when I was a kid. She was really excited for this doll to be released, but she was telling me that she would like to see me make it more accurate to the movie. Not her exact words, but I choose to withhold that information. But the point of me saying that is because my mom doesn't mind that I had to use permanent vinyl this time. I finished sewing together the pieces of the bodice, and then I cut out a hole in the front to show the exposed rib cage. I'm really glad they were able to add this sculpting detail to the Emily doll. It's super cool. I then used the same technique that I did for the bottom of the dress, using some watered down acrylic paint to add the ombre effect to the top and bottom of the bodice. I decided to also add some of the paint around the hole at the front of the bodice because I wanted that part to especially look worn down and withered. So far, I'm really happy with how the bodice is turning out, but I want to give it some extra detail by doing some hand beading. So I have these tiny beads that we used on our Lunar New Year snake custom, and then I also bought these slightly larger beads from Michaels in 11-0 size. These ones are like pearlescent, and then I found this one that is like the perfect shade of blue beads in there as well, and some solid white ones I think I might use. Hand beading can be a very tedious and time-consuming process, but usually throughout the entire process of doll making, I'm always watching something in the background or listening to music to help make the time go by a little faster. And then an hour or so later, I'm done hand beading the bodice, and here is how it's looking. Not fully accurate to how it looks in the movie because I think she only has white beads, but I like the varying colors. I decided to make her a new veil using the same white cotton gauze fabric, and then doing the same technique again to ombre it to blue with my watered down acrylic paint. In the movie, it looks like her veil is made out of the same fabric from the bottom of her dress. And then I also decided to give her some fingerless gloves out of that same fabric using the same technique to ombre them to blue. Then using the rest of my vinyl cutouts, I added some swirls to the veil. I'm still not finished with her entire outfit, but this is everything for the sewing portion, and I am very happy with the results. I want to remove all of her accessories before I begin any repaint, so I'm taking off her earrings, putting those aside, and then cutting off the plastic ties that are holding her flower crown in place. I honestly might have kept the original flower crown if it didn't have all the bits and dangly things at the front of it, but I'm sure it'll be more interesting for me to make a new one anyway. I debated on giving this doll a yarn reroute to get the proper curls and texture that I wanted for her hair, but my mom insisted that I keep this hair because she really liked the length, so I want to make her happy. When I started this project, I initially had no intention on repainting this doll's face, but after doing a poll on Instagram, you guys overwhelmingly said that I should repaint this doll, so I'm going to do it for the people. I have never wiped the factory face off of a doll this highly priced at retail, so this was very nerve-wracking for me. I have repainted expensive dolls in the past, but that expensive version was more of a secondhand expensive, and this one felt a little more scary. As you can see, I kept the factory painted eyebrows because I honestly think they look really good. There is some things I would change about the eyes and lips, so that is what I will be attempting to do with this repaint. I'm starting the face by sketching with my mechanical pencil after I did a spray with matte Mr. Super Clear. I'm just sketching the eyes to be a little more rounded than the factory face. I'm trying to make this face look as close to how Emily looks in the movie as possible. This is a really great face mold for Emily, but the eye is a little bit more pointed in the inner corners than I would like. So I'm trying my best to hide that, By also adding some chalk pastel in blue. I actually really liked the purple eyeshadow they had on the base doll, but for movie accuracy's sake, I am using some blue chalk pastel. I also went ahead and did some subtle body blushing just in areas that won't be hidden by her dress. While I was doing this, I compared her to my mannequin doll, and I'm just wondering if Emily has a slightly bigger bust than standard Monster High dolls. Not to be weird or anything, I just think it's interesting because it would obviously make the dress shape fit better on the doll, but at the same time, why not do this for Elvira? Anyway, I don't want to sound creepy or anything, I just find it very interesting when we get new sculpting on Monster High dolls. So for her lips, I used a watercolor pencil, and then I'm going back in deepening the pigment with my chalk pastel for her eyeshadow. I try to be careful with how much chalk pastel I lay down for building up pigment on face-ups because sometimes it gets a little difficult to remove pigment with my kneaded eraser in areas where I don't want pigment, and with this face it was especially giving me trouble with this one eye. After this, I give her another spray of Mr. Super Clear and I can move on to my acrylic paints. Starting off with her lipstick, I mixed together this shade of magenta. Magenta is always such a hard color for me to mix together. I don't know why. It just always never comes out exactly how I want it to look. But with this one, I am pretty happy with the color. I'm really happy with how her Cupid's bow came out. I wanted it to be a lot more defined, as well as giving her a heavier thickness on the corners of her lips. For the hole on her left cheek, I am just filling this in with black acrylic paint. I know on the base doll you can see her teeth through it, but looking through many photos from the movie, I cannot really find a good one that you can see her teeth through the side, so I'm just gonna leave it black. While I have my black acrylic paint out, I'm going to paint over her eyelashes and pupils. My lines are getting a little messy on the inside, but that's okay because it'll be covered by white acrylic paint later on. When it comes to painting this face, the eye look is much more simplified compared to faces I've painted in the past. However, since I'm going for the accuracy, this is as close as I can get to the iconic look from the film. I did want to keep the side glance that the base doll had. I really like the look of it, as well as when she's wearing the maggot earring, it kind of looks like she's looking over at him. Moving on to my white acrylic paint, I'm going to need a bit more of it than I normally do for my face-ups because these eyes are much larger and the pupils are much smaller. And because I like to slightly water down my acrylic paints, that way you don't see any brush strokes, I'm going to need that extra buildup. But when it's done, it looks something like this, and I'm very happy with how the face is looking. I want her eyelids to be a much darker shade of blue eyeshadow, so I'm taking some acrylic paint and just painting that onto the lid instead of using the chalk pastel to make it any more pigmented. That way it's more of a harsh line. And to finish off this face up, I'm doing a dusting of some blue shimmery powder to give a little bit of sparkle. I actually really prefer the matte look for this face up, so I'm not going to be doing any gloss varnish this time. Moving on to her shoes, I 3D printed these shoes on my resin printer. These are designed by Demoka from that gorgeous Emily Corpse Bride design that they did, and 3D sculpted by Studio42. Both of them will be linked in the description. So I just have to paint on the tiny little butterflies on the shoes, and then I'm also painting a white pearlescent paint on the base of the shoe to give it a little bit of shine. I wanted to give Maggot his own little repaint because there is really no paint details in the places where I felt he needed it. Unfortunately, my camera was out of focus for most of this. But all I did was paint on his eyeshadow, his lipstick, and then I cleaned up the eye shape a little bit because it was a little off the mold, and I feel like this looks a million times better. I wish they were able to do this on the actual doll. For the base of Emily's flower crown, I glued on some fake moss and ribbon flowers to a piece of wire, and I think this is what her flower crown would have looked like when she was alive. So then I painted over the entire thing in a grayish blue paint, sat that to dry overnight, and then moved on to painting these tiny little butterflies, also sculpted from Studio42. These are the same mold that are on Emily's shoes, but I wanted to print some more butterflies to add them to her dress, like in the final scene where she turns into butterflies. And with that, my custom Corpse Bride doll is done. I am beyond happy with how this doll turned out. She's definitely up there in one of my favorite projects of the year. I just love seeing the before and after and where all the details changed, and I'm really glad I was able to make this doll a bit more accurate to the movie. And of course my mom loves this doll. Thank you, Mom. So I'm glad that I'm able to give it to her. Plus she has a really cool Halloween display like table in her room that I know this doll will sit on. While this doll won't be available in my shop, I still do have plenty of dolls and other things available in my shop currently. I'm actually going to be going out of town for the next 2.5 weeks, so I would like to offer a discount code to anybody who makes a purchase within that 2.5 weeks that I'm gone, just as a thank you for your patience in waiting for the delayed shipping. So if you would like to get a discount and you're willing to wait a few weeks for me to ship out your order, there will be a discount up in my shop. And as always, I'd love to give a huge shout out and thank you to all of my lovely Patreon members. Thank you guys for making videos like this possible by supporting me over on Patreon. If you want to support me on Patreon, the link is in the description. You get early access to YouTube videos just like this one, as well as early access to dolls available in my shop with discounts year-round. I've been working hard to try and get this video up by Halloween, so if you're watching it on Halloween, yay! I'm glad I was able to pull it off. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to see more, you can like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and hopefully I will see you in the next doll customizing video. Bye!